Hello? Yep, we can all be now. Welcome all. I see you now, you will. Okay, there you are. Welcome all to IMFA Science and Rigor webinars. This is going to be our first webinar in economics, IMFA economics. I'm pretty sure some of you've attended to the others. And this is a new initiative, like some of you're already familiar with that. We are trying to promote and catalyze talents from US to Spain, communicating in collaboration with other universities. And the universities that we're collaborating with, and I'm pretty sure you're going to be related somehow to any of those, are University of Valladolid, Valencia, La Laguna, Europea Miguel de Cervantes, Politécnica de Valencia, Oviedo, Sevilla, Málaga, Politécnica de Catalunya, UNIR, and Autónoma de Madrid. All together, we are trying to construct a network of talent and trying to communicate and trying to share our experiences, and in this case, science and rigor webinars, and trying to promote the excellence in investigations, research, and other tasks that on our daily tasks we have to confront with. So today we are broadcasting from New York and California. So we're going to have two time zones here. You guys are listening from Spain mostly. So we're going to have like half of the time zones in the whole world. So it's going to be exciting to learn about the new research. And we have Monge, so that everyone is seeing here as a panelist. And he's a researcher and entrepreneur researcher, I will call it, in good research in California. And as a friend as well, and I wanted to give you words to explain what's your bio, what are we going to learn about today, and yeah, that's it. And feel free, everyone, as you all have been attending to this kind of webinars, that you can raise questions. We'll have some Q&A questions at the end of the meeting, but also we have open questions here that if somehow Will is talking about something that you're pretty interested in and you want to ask right away, we can try to make it, because it's a manageable group today to talk and we can interact easier. So, Will, what are we going to talk about today? Thanks for hearing me.
So hi everyone, I'm Guillermo or Will. I lived for a bit in the US when I was a kid, so everyone even in Spain calls me Will. So although my real name is Guillermo, I go by Will. We're going to talk about a little bit of different things. I'm going to give you a brief overview of my personal bio, so that gives you like a little bit of a background on the context of the things that I've done, and then we are going to talk a little bit about how do the steps to you need to do in order to apply to a master's program in the US. And then a little bit about research, especially from like the private side, like entrepreneur research kind of thing, as Abel mentioned before. And then I'm happy to talk about some of the stuff that I do, which is, I think, I mean, for me it's interesting, which is kind of like in the connection of technology and society, and that being very abstract is basically my job title is kind of like privacy researcher, and I'll start the presentation now, so you guys can see.
Yes.
Right. Perfect.
Yeah, we can see it. Yes.
So a little bit about me now. Yeah, I am a researcher at Gut Research, where I focus on privacy, algorithmic transparency, model accountability, model risk, and what I do for my day-to-day, I apply data science methods, ethnography methods, and user experience research, kind of like all together, depending on what the project is. So when we start talking about what I do, you'll see it's a little bit of a mix, and I'm still figuring out things how to do them. So I'm glad for any input or any questions, please. Yeah. So my prior experience to California. So I studied math back in Universidad Complutense in Madrid, and I didn't know what I wanted to do. I thought I wanted to do a PhD in math, and I thought I wanted to do it in the US. So I applied to a bunch of schools, but then I ended up working in. I ended up having a job offer for working in a consulting firm in like the financial space, in where I worked with Abel for quite a time,
Yeah.
and I really enjoyed it. So for quite some years I was like a methodological consultant, in which I basically built risk models and other types of models for predicting or measuring the risk, or trying to predict income or inflow of clients or customers, things like that for customers, usually around the financial sector. I did a lot of stuff around mortgages for quite a while, and then for like the last part of my like 5-year stint there, I was focusing around model risk and how there was a lot of regulation, or starting to come up with new regulation around how to manage models in banks after the financial crisis. One of the things that went wrong was using models without really knowing what they were going to do, and quite a disconnect between the person that created the model and the person that's using the model, so that the person that's using the model didn't know correctly the limitations and what it should be used for. And I'll get back to that, and because I apply that every day right now in different settings. And then the other thing I did was I led some teams in the research and development team to kind of like build some standardized tools around model development and things like that. Also to kind of like bring together the people that use them, the people that create them, the people that design them, the people that review them, to make sure that we're managing that model risk. So that's a little bit about me, and I'll be happy to talk about it more in detail later. But for now, how do you study in the US? So I actually tried to come for my undergraduate, and then it's pretty costly, and I ended up studying math back in Spain. So I've tried to come here a bunch of times, and I did it at last. So I have like a little bit of input from different stages. The one I did is a couple of years ago, I finished my a master's in information and data science in Berkeley, and that's an online program. And it's a program that the information school in Berkeley created and imparts and gives out. And the information school is very interdisciplinary at its core. So the professors are political scientists, are computer scientists, anthropologists, people from statistics, mathematicians, computers, I said that, lawyers, policy people. So we have a little bit of everything. So what I found interesting about this program was that I would see how to treat data and how data is used from many different sides and many different points of view. And that was what was most, yeah.
And you were doing this within like while you were working, now, right? That's like compatibility. You was able to online, and then you could attend some classes.
Exactly. Yeah. So the nature of this program was online, but it's not like a massively, it's not like a Coursera kind of thing. So it was basically sessions similar to these, in which there'd be a professor and like 7 to 12 of us, and we'd all see our faces and would be like that. And I took it while I was in New York working, and I would connect at night, and we would meet like one time per week per course, one time per week per course. So I was taking 2 courses. I'd have like 2 classes like that. And then you had like a lot of asynchronous content that they call, that is videos that you have to go through, and readings and
like the Coursera stuff, no? More related like Coursera.
Yeah, more like the Coursera stuff. Yeah,
okay. Okay. And the workload that you were taking, more or less, like what's the workload that you would say?
It depends, and it depends on the background. But for me, I'd say it was around like 20 hours a week, kind of. Some weeks being a lot less, some weeks being a little bit more. But that was around
the average. Okay.
So so that's about mids. If you're interested, please let me know. I'm happy to rant about that for a while. But I think you guys are more interested in the application process. usually masters in the US, you need one of the like placement tests, one of those standardized tests, which is usually either the GRE or the GMAT. The GRE is usually more for academic kind of masters, if you're trying to get into a PhD program. And they could even ask you for the GRE plus the GRE subject test, which means you're going to take the GRE, and then you're going to have to go and take another test that is going to be only regarding that subject. So for me, because I was doing math, I had to take the GRE math. So after you take the GRE, you know, a couple of days later or whenever you want to do that, even in another city, you go to this place and you take the GRE math test. And that was like a test that would like have questions over, let's say, anything that I studied during my first 3 years of math school. So that gives you like a little bit of background in there.
Okay.
And then for all of us international students that are not native in English or that have not studied in English school, we have to provide it like you know, some sort of test that tests for our English level. Exactly. So usually the TOEFL is the one that's most used, but there's also this one called the IELTS that is more associated with the British Council and, you know, El Británico in Spain. So yeah, that's that. And then the application process, it's a really long process, I'd say. I'm sure it depends also on the different types of masters, but compared to the masters in Spain that I don't know that much about, but I applied to one or two, it's very different. And I'd say you need a lot more time and you need to start a lot earlier for masters in the US. So for example, when I was trying to apply for the PhD program, I was in a 5-year program in Madrid and doing like my undergraduate. I started on my 4th year, like midway through my 4th year or the start of my 4th year. That's when I started getting all the information. And actually at the last, like during the summer of, you know, from 3rd to 4th, that's when I started getting all the information. During 4th year, I started reaching out to different universities to getting contact with the people there. So, I mean, you really need to plan out a little bit ahead. So, I mean, give you like almost a year. Is like a good time. Yeah. Plus, usually the application deadlines end up like super early compared to Spain, or you know, at least I'm always talking about my experience in Spain. So I'm sure there's different ways, but yeah, the application deadline is quite soon. It could be like December, and the masters don't start until like maybe June or something like that, or maybe even September the next year.
So I would say like 1 year and a half before I had like 1 year.
Yeah, 1 year and a half, and you'll be safe for sure, because you know scheduling these tests is not that easy. And if you're in the US, it's super easy because you know there's a test like anywhere at any given time. In Europe, for example, for me, I had to go and take the GRE in Barcelona because I only had like 2 or 3 months that I could take it. So I had to go to Barcelona.
And you were in Madrid, so.
And I was in Madrid, exactly. Sorry, yeah.
Like a small city.
Yeah. So I don't know why that happened. Probably because I wanted to take it over the summer or something. And I'm sure now there's more. Yeah. For the GRE math, I actually had to go all the way to Lisbon from Madrid because that was the closest place I could schedule a test within the time range that I wanted. So yeah. I mean, you know, just sometimes you need that. If you have enough time, you'll be able to, you know, to schedule it probably in Madrid, or within a reasonable range of Madrid, hopefully.
Yeah.
So more about the application process. The application process usually has a lot of information that you have to fill out. And one of the most important things is usually the cover letter or the motivation of why you want to take that program. And so they usually have like a couple questions. And one is why you want to actually go to graduate school. And the other one is like, why in particular this graduate school? Why are you applying to this program? And I mean, there's a whole kind of like, I mean, you can fill a shelf of books talking about this. And I read a few of them when I was trying to apply. And, you know, the main thing I'd say is, you know, always try to get it to a personal story that talks about sometime you had a breakthrough. I had a breakthrough, like had a problem and you know, struggled a bit, and then we're like, and you found out a way to solve that problem. And that could be in anything in your life. So it
Mhm.
doesn't have to be anything academic in particular. It could be a sports thing. It could be, I don't know, it could be a creative thing. It could be, it could be a personal situation with your family or something like that. Usually when you're talking about something that's personal and not in the way like it's like super private, but that relates to you, and that like a life story, and if you're passionate about it, it will be a lot easier to talk about it, and the passion will show through your words, and that's what you really want to show. A good way to kind of measure if your story kind of like is a good one is it's actually having a story, because at the end of the day you're going to be reading like thousands of these or whatever the amount is. So everyone is going to list why they're good, and everyone is usually going to say pretty much the same thing. I'm very curious. I work hard. I really enjoy studying, or whatever, things like that. So in the end of the day, you want something that will make you memorable. That will be like, okay, yeah, remember the guy that that had like the bike story? So yeah, you want to be that guy, right? Because when somebody remembers you because of that whatever that is, oh, do you remember the guy that talked about he was afraid of clowns and then he became a clown in the circus? I don't know, some things like that, things that really
Mhm.
stick in your mind. Then you have a good story, and that's one of the biggest things you need here, I think, in terms of the application process. So really give you some time for, finding out what you want to talk about and writing it out. And then you can find ways to kind of like answer those questions of like why you want to go to graduate school and why you want to go to, in particular, to that school, based on that story. And then we come to the visas. Oh yeah, and also, as Abel pointed out, you will need usually recommendation letters. Recommendation letters are a little bit different in the U.S. than in Spain. In Spain, I feel like they're a little bit of, whatever. Like it's a rite of passage,
Mhm.
and you'll ask someone, and they'll probably tell you to write it yourself, and then
They will
they'll kind of
tell.
like just write it. I mean, that's a relatively common thing. Not that it should be done like that, but um, in the U.S., it's important to say that it's actually a pretty serious thing, and not like if the if the letter is not outstanding, or if it's like a neutral letter, or like a letter that's it's actually going to damage your application process for sure.
Mhm.
So you usually want to ask at least one person that has an academic relation with you, and hopefully a professor, but make sure that it's someone that really kind of knows you, because the more personal the letter is, and the more details they give about you, the better it's going to look on you, and the more they're going to be able to defend like why you should be applying to that, and the better they're going to be able to actually make a letter that sounds you know specific for you, and not like just random. It could be for anyone, and just change the name, and that is really important. And you could
Is it,
also ask for, yeah.
I'm sorry, is it common for them to call this reference that has made the letter, or like call to contrast, or does it ever happen?
No, I would say no, not in my experience.
Hmm?
But the letter will, like, they will read the letter, and if it's a letter that they feel changing the
That,
name and it will apply for anyone, then it will. I mean, they won't even contact the guy, and I mean, not that they usually contact, but it will really damage your application
okay,
process. Like like
like
a
a standard
like
one.
yeah, yeah.
Mm.
You can also ask. I mean, friends is not that, but if you have maybe like somebody that's been your mentor in a different thing, you could ask your coach, for example. You could ask, I don't know. I asked, for example, a researcher that was a friend of my parents, with whom I had like a lot of conversations over the years on actually like my interests and some of the problems I had when I was studying. So that type of person is actually could be also a positive. It doesn't have, he was kind of like an uncle to me. It was not exactly family, but that helps because he was a researcher, and he could talk about me from a very personal side of and point of view, but also like of my academic standing of that kind of.
So that,
yeah,
that's perfect match.
yeah. So, and lastly, visas. So there's a lot of information also, but visas in the US are complicated. Probably you don't know. You already know. Yeah. As
we heard it many years.
Yeah.
Not everywhere.
Yeah. It's quite the process. So usually for studying, you get an F1. Now for online masters, usually, and at least for my online master, because there's no commitment and there's no commitment in being like being in the US, like I could take that master's from anywhere, they would not sponsor the F1 visa. That is good and bad, because that is good because I could stay in Spain and do the master's from Spain. That is bad in kind of like a little bit down the road, because the good thing about having an F1 is that then, especially if you're in the STEM, like science and technology and engineering field, is that you can apply to that OPT. And that OPT is kind of like a few years after you're done with you're done studying, in which you can work. And you can work related to your master's. And that's almost automatic. Virtually automatic. And I don't know where the regulation is right now, because it's changing all the time, but it's pretty good. And you get like, I think like 2 years. And if you are in the STEM field, you get like an extra 1 year or something like that. So that gives you 3 full years to work for somebody in the US with a full like visa, with a full working visa or kind of working visa. And then from there, you could kind of like leverage and apply for an H-1B. That is usually the one you want if you want to stay for a long time. So that's what I have to say. There's multiple types of visas, and the best thing that you can do is reach out to their international careers services, and they'll be able to tell you a lot more and in a lot more detail that what I'm here to tell you. But I just wanted to point that out for the online masters thing.
Okay.
So private research versus academia. Yeah, this is a big and kind of like hard topic, but I feel like in my experience in Spain and like in research in Spain is mainly through my colleagues of like math school that have or done research, and also through my parents that are a professor at UNED and like a researcher at CSIC. So I mean, that's my background in research. It doesn't mean that I know like all the different types of things at all, but that's a little bit of what I'm coming from. In the US, there is a opportunity to do some research in the private sector. So for example, I am working for a really small company. I'm like the third employee or fourth, depends on how you count. The person that created this company, that founded this company, is a professor from Berkeley, and he's an associate professor. I don't know the actual title because there's also a lot of things there. So he teaches at Berkeley, but that's not his main job. His main job is this one. It's kind of like a consulting kind of firm, and in which we do research, and we partner with we partner with Berkeley, we partner with other colleges, we partner with the different institutes for computer science and blah blah blah, Information and Computer Science Institute, and we also do projects for for big tech companies and not so big tech companies as well around here. So it's a little bit of in the middle. What I like about it is that we publish papers, but that's not the entire, that's not the all we do, right? And it's publishing papers may be a little bit more secondary. We do projects that are usually more related to the R&D department of a company, or excuse me. the R&D department, or specific side, specific like corporate teams within the organization. For example, the privacy, the chief privacy office, or things like that. The data protection office, or team within the company, and things like that. So the client can be a little bit, all over the place. And sometimes some of those opportunities also lend to publishing papers or publishing white papers with, those teams, and presenting them at conferences.
So
like
basically what it says, I mean, let's see if I understand. So it gives you an opportunity to see more like not only like in papers, but also like in real life applications. So it would be like these companies that are really interested on your research, and they apply in their businesses or for whatever purpose they have.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this is something that US has a lot more than Spain. And there's a lot of like actual kind of like academic researchers that work for the company. Right. And especially for like larger corporations. And I've seen anthropologists work at, big, massive like computer hardware companies. And for example, they did research on how people use the computer and like the physical components of the computer, things like that. I've seen user research, like user experience researchers, like right now in Silicon Valley, they're all over the place, right? And trying to do research around how people interact with your product, and that's more on the social sciences. But you also have a lot of like mathematicians and statisticians working for people like Google Brain and things like that, and people that are trying to develop internal products that use math or statistics or data science, machine learning, whatever you want to call it. So yeah, they have people that are looking into pushing the standard forward, or actually incorporating some of those like high ideas that are coming from academia and from these places like Google Brain into whatever product that is for companies that are not as super player like Google and Facebook, right? So if you're not like the Facebook AI, there's a lot of still like self-driving car companies trying to build their own stuff, but you also have other companies that are trying to incorporate that into their product stack. And how can I leverage AI into what I do?
Okay.
And I think that's a good opportunity of being somewhere in the middle. I've always kind of like felt myself like I want to have like one foot in each. And for me, I'm having a lot of fun in this type of like flow.
Yeah, because in Spain, this kind of role is kind of hidden, because many companies that you would see like people in the universities and maybe they research in the academia.
Yeah.
But it would be like right in the middle, like a consulting for some time in the university and some time for the private sector. So it's right in the middle. So
yeah, something like that. Yeah. And for example, I'm gonna attend a conference that's called EPIC, and it's basically ethnography in practice, which means we're gonna have ethnographers from there's an ethnographer coming from Intel. There's like people from all over mainly from like from companies, but they're doing research inside companies. So maybe from like Delta Airlines, and how they did research on the check-in system or things like that. I mean, I don't know, I'm just putting stuff out.
Okay.
So I mean, if there's a conference, it's a pretty I don't know, it's getting bigger and bigger, that conference, I hear. So I'm excited to go. I'll let you know how it goes. But yeah.
Okay. Yeah, we can connect. We can publish it anyway, so we can connect with that if it's public. Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, so that shows that there's the like space for that, definitely. Okay, so I don't know if there's Abel, do you think we've covered pretty much everything that we wanted to talk about, and now we can talk about
we can do the application. We could cover. Yeah, because we need to give the role of this kind of researcher, investigator. So I think we've been like a good flavor of that. If anyone has any comments, any questions or anything, just like you can write it down, or you can even raise a hand and you want to talk. So because it's a manageable group, so we can talk about that. I think we've gone through.
Cool. So, I mean, this is very much a Q&A already,
Mm,
but we had, or you wanna start it
yeah,
out,
we wanted,
Abel?
yeah,
Okay.
we wanted to talk because we basically wanted to know this kind of like what Will has gone through, this kind of roles with this kind of research, what opportunities that are provided for us from the science sector and from the research sector here in the US, and these like a new roles in comparing to Spain. And this is basically the conversation topics we planned. We proposed these kind of topics, but basically we wanted to talk about the what basically Will is investigating and researching in California, and it's basically the interaction from technology and society. And interrupt me if I'm saying something wrong, but and since this is like since this is kind of modern and trendy right now, I'm pretty sure everyone have heard about the Uber fatal Uber accident. We all like in this kind of technologies and in California, I'm pretty sure there are like a huge impact of these kind of things. It's really important to do the aftermath of this kind of accidents, and even from taking care of that, we are talking about serious things because in this case it was a fatal accident. We all feel sorry about that, but from the science perspective, it's good to do the post-mortem that is done, that is actually happened, and to learn from the fact that have gone wrong and trying to perform it better for the researcher that were performing. Because on these states, we all heard when this was like 2 or 3 years ago, when Uber proposed that they were gonna bring in the street some self-driving cars. There was a huge discussions on what would happen if something goes wrong. So basically, after 3 years, which is saying coldly is not that bad, that 3 years after it has happened, this kind of accident, now the huge impact that it's happening to the technology is amazing. So basically, as a brief summary of what happened on March 18th in Arizona, and recall it, a biker was jaywalking the street, jaywalking like basically on a dark side. It was at night, so the Uber self-driving car has was supposed to have the systems to stop even when a jaywalker was across the street and even when it was at night. So it's technologically it was perfectly capable of stopping, but they are still investigating and there's still different hypotheses on what will happen. But the car basically didn't stop. It was going at 40 miles per hour. I think it was the number. It's an impact that it's little for any human being. So basically the woman, I think I recall, 49-year-old, basically she deceased. So and there was like a huge discussion and political discussion basically because this is a thing that the main impact is on political and which they are supposed to take care of the society. So the main reaction was to banning Uber from performing this kind of tests in interaction with the society. And 1 week and a half later, like end of March, Uber decided to stop researching on this kind of self-driving cars, and there was some kind of different movements on you we see some like main researchers leaving Uber and going to other companies, and there are some of these researchers that have gone now to Boston, so they are going to other tech companies basically doing the same. So you will see like what's the interest on this thing. Like they cannot do it anymore in California and it doesn't look right. They do it more over there because basically Uber was located there, but now they are focusing on other areas where they are allowed to continue this investigation. Um, so basically, that's what happened. The researchers stopped. They couldn't fund because it doesn't look right to keep researching or keep testing some things and having like a minor, even if it's minor, but some kind of risk of killing people or damaging people. So it's a thing that doesn't look right for any company. So that's what decided. Also, it's interesting that Toyota or other companies has stopped the researcher just because has a tsunami effect that when Uber stops, why do you stop? So this is a huge impact in all the self-driving, and we wanted to talk like what would be the aftermath. And I think the main question here, everyone keeps asking about what went wrong in the researcher, because it's true that the research they try to justify, and there's like lots of legal and counterparties and everyone lots of interest, and let's face it, there's monetary and personal interest that somehow they are balanced, and they are you put value to a life at the end. But from a research point of view, it's true that it's, and from a research or from any type of, it's impossible to go out in the business or go out in any market, or to test something with 100% certainty of what you are doing. But they are requested when this kind of things happens to keep testing to this 100% hypothetical that it's going to be impossible to reach. So that's what has happened. From a researcher point of view, I don't know if you have any opinion, or of, we don't know because this is kind of private, but we don't know what the researcher was based on, what kind of researcher, what kind of tests were done. We know that they keep saying that we tested everything that was capable, everything that we could test, and these kind of things could happen. So what would you think, like, what, I don't know if it's a difficult question to say what went wrong, but what would you do if you were a researcher from Uber and right now trying to justify, like, I did my job, but we failed, because that's what they are trying to justify right now, that they
I mean, yeah, I mean, it's a great question, and that's a great multiple questions. There's I don't want to, I mean, and I don't want to, and I don't want to get into the specifics because I don't know enough about, what is going under the hood. And of course it's also very secretive.
Yes.
But it's really hard, right? It's really hard in multiple ways. It's really hard if you look at it from like a microscopic view. Just the, self-driving is a major problem that is actually, a lot of really small problems, being solved at the same time, and then trying to communicate that, right? You have things like object detection, and and object classifications, and like from image processing to object classification super fast, and then automatic decision making on that. You have to just those three problems together, they're really hard. Like, there's multiple PhDs and multiple years of research into just one of those three, right? So trying to bring that all together and make it so that it's a chip inside a car, and that it works within 0.1 second. It's it's like magic almost. I mean, we're really it's super hard. Having said that, there's also from a macro level, it's a very complicated problem, because even if you've been able to solve all the math and all the statistics and all the computer science around it, it's deeply ingrained in society. So even if we have the perfect car, the perfect car that doesn't kill anyone, that drives perfectly, and that's never going to happen, because even human drivers make errors, and that will always happen. But even if we had that situation, we would have to change so many things in our society. For starters, car insurance. So even in this perspective of a society in which every single car is a self-driving car, and two cars just ran into each other because whatever happened, just like a mere accident, maybe like just like a huge hurricane came and just smacked one car into the other one, right? Something that the car could have never done, even if it was like a perfect driver. Okay, so what do you do now? Whose fault is it, right? So, I mean, you could say that maybe it's the programmer's fault, or is the company that built the software, the company that built the hardware. So there's so many places in which you can place the blame, and that actually works for the Uber car right now. Like, where do we place the blame? Is it the guy that developed the sensors, because the sensors did not reply in the specific moment in time that they had? Is it the code? Is it a software thing in which we have like multiple teams working on all the entire code base that goes into that car? Like, how do you know what what line of code or what component of the code was that. Sometimes these teams are leveraging, outside, libraries and things like that. You're using, a Fourier transform library compiled in C or directly in whatever that you didn't build out. It's like a standard but maybe something went wrong with that. And, I'm using it. Am I as a user, am I, liable for that, or are they liable for that? And then, it comes licensing and all that. But that's just for the software. Is it more on the street was not correctly lit for the whatever.
Even if the reaction was correct, like the brake has a brake, maybe they couldn't have stopped, and so that would be like another blame on others. So there's lots of interaction factors.
Yeah. So going back to the kind of like the insurance, one proposal that is going to what's called a no-fault model. And a no-fault model basically says, okay, nobody has the fault. We don't let's forget about who's liable for this. What we'll have is kind of like a lottery kind of thing. We have a pool of funds, and when you're paying your insurance company, you're contributing to that pool. And then whenever a car breaks because of blah, somebody smack him or whatever, we just take money from that pool according to some rules, right? So that's like an alternative to how car insurance works right now, and that will work for example, a world in which no fault should, we don't have to attribute fault to anyone.
Yeah, basically that's what happened after reading, because they don't say the amount, but Uber settle with the family of this woman on this age, and basically they don't want to communicate to them, put a price on someone's life, but they agree with that. They don't want to put the fault on anyone. Maybe for the society the damage is done for this company or for this kind of particular technology, but they keep saying like, let's forget about that. We're gonna continue our research, but they don't want to point anyone who's blaming this kind of software development or this kind of road or this kind of the brakes that they couldn't break or something.
Exactly. And more things that are complicated at a macro level is just regulation. And what regulation? Well, from like signage and rules like should we make some lanes that are only for self-driving cars and some other lanes that are only for human driving cars, or just even human driven cars, or even just like some areas in which only self-driving cars can go through there, and then some other routes that only human drivers can go through that, because the intersection of human driving cars and self-driving cars is going to be a little bit it's going to be an area of a lot of friction in terms of, there's a lot of problems of how a machine can work around a human. Two machines can work around themselves a little bit easier because you can communicate between them, and you could have protocols that work for both. It's also a very complicated problem, but I think it's slightly less complicated than trying to predict what a human is going to do and how he's going to react to that. So there's also a lot of research into that, and there's decades of research into this, and in particular, even in self-driving cars, how even like trying to predict the emotion of someone, right? Because it's not the same, if someone has road rage, and you're gonna drive very differently if somebody's like being like a reckless driver, or if somebody's like a normal driver, neutral driver, or something that's very defensive, and I don't know. Even just the way you drive is different, changes according to how you see people and how you interact with people, and that's a lot of the times is based on prejudice that we have. Like, okay, I see a red Ferrari, or I see like this car with with the tinted windows, and with like neon, and bumping, and everything with the bumpers. I'm probably going to react very differently to like a station wagon in which I see kind of like a mom driving it. So that's just prejudice that I have. It doesn't mean anything. It sometimes works. That's why we have prejudice. But that's why you need also like anthropologists and ethnography to see how people react to that and how people go about driving. If you have to, like, there's actually some researchers that are looking into incorporating those types of emotions into self-driving cars, trying to predict what emotion the other person has and trying to react according to that and kind of like include that. And actually some people are talking that, we should include those same emotions into the bot that's driving or not. And other people are saying, no, they should not have emotions. That should be neutral. They should be all like
It should be
robots.
robots.
Yeah. And other people are saying, no, like, if you cut him off twice, then he should be more defensive and, like flip you the bird or whatever.
Okay, and this correlates a lot. I mean, with the second point, because we were talking about different
Yeah.
disciplines and the trust, like in short, the trust that we put in numbers and the need from these days to basically for any reaction and interaction that we do with the world, like the knowledge that we should be engaging into more statistical and literacy, and the more like the trust into numbers, the more statistical knowledge that we're engaging, because we are more rounded by number related maths or number related decisions that we don't know and we may not be aware of that we are taking, but we are, as for any person in the society, when you try to go to the bank and you try to choose from one side from one option to the other, you are interacting. But even though when you see that more perspective of what the economic would be, also I would say like there's a huge interaction, and I wouldn't. The main example is the markets, that we don't really know how we interact with the flows of the different markets. So there's a huge impact within the legal or politics, that they should be engaging more into this kind of statistical knowledge. That this is what you were talking about, the need of the data science knowledge, even if it's not as a creator or a generator, as a user of the possible applications or the possible impact of deciding what would you say, what would the interaction by saying like one choice, now I stop Uber, or now I stop doing that because it has happened once. Statistically saying that's another decision, but I think that the interaction with the statistics is a huge.
Absolutely. Like in our present times, and I think more and more as we use more data and more data is available and becomes available, and there's a lot of decisions that are based on data, and the cycle of data to decision is in some companies and in some places is being like made shorter and shorter every time, right? There's a lot of automation or some point of automation in the middle, which maybe there'd be a human in the loop that they call, but it's definitely shortening by a lot. So the people that are making the decisions need to be able to understand some of the liabilities, some of the limitations, some of the risks of using data and of using models and of using that type of automation. And to illustrate it with actually an example that kind of like relates to the one up there, the self-driving cars, is that when I in order for me to be able to drive, I need to take a driver's test. Right now, driver's test is when I'm studying for that driver's test and when I'm practicing for that driver's test, what I'm doing is I'm learning how, the abilities and the limitations of cars, right? And in particular of my car, but in general. Now, I don't know how, a combustion engine works, like, from, the chemistry of it. I maybe have a, decent idea, not even decent idea probably. But I don't need to know, the chemical reactions that are going underneath, the engineering behind it. But I do need to know, that if I'm going like, 100 miles an hour and there's a curve coming up, I probably want to, pump the brakes a little bit, because if not, I'm going to swerve and then, I'm just going to, there's no way I'm going to be able to make that. So those types of like reactions, right? And if you see that there's a lot of cars like up there, and you're probably going to start applying the brakes before, right? Or if there's a car braking in front of you, even if it's like super far away, you don't want to keep on like, jamming the accelerator, right? So, there's a lot of things that you're learning of the limitations of cars. Like, you know, a car doesn't stop automatically. You know, a car, you know, can't like, you know, take like super, you know, super narrow turns, things like that. You know that there's blind spots in your cars, right? So you know that, you know, you have to be looking almost all the time to be aware of your surroundings, because if I only look once, there could be a car that I'm not seeing and I could just ram into it. Things like that. Those are the things that you're learning. Now, we could apply this same thing to anything, right? To any model. You don't have to know how deep learning works in order to understand some of the limitations around deep learning. Or you don't know how to understand all the analysis that went through in the data, but you have to know a little bit of where the data is coming from and what happens and like what is missing there, or what, you know, what things can we apply it to and what things we can't apply it to. So again, going back to self-driving cars, I think it would be interesting to start to incorporate, as you know, as cars are starting to incorporate some self-driving features, as you know, adaptive cruise control, or that basically just regulates your you know, your speed according to the traffic, and you're not hitting the accelerator at all, you're just, you know, driving. But if cars start going a little bit slower, you know, the car will, you know, decrease speed and things like that. Or self-parking and things like that. I think those should be incorporated into like a driving test. So you should be able to know that when there's a lot of traffic, you should not use the adaptive cruise control. You know, I don't know how the radar, it's actually LiDAR, works, like the sensor works that detects other cars. But I have a brief idea that it doesn't work that well when the objects are close. So because of that, I can't, like in traffic, I have to do it manually, because my car is not going to be able to, you know, if somebody just crosses or jaywalks right in front of my car, maybe the car was not ready for that. So, you know,
the decision is going to be much faster than any human decision. So you won't be able to anticipate to that because it's a machine. So
yeah, exactly. So, I mean, we should be able to also like work these into like, and understand these concepts and understand these tools a little bit better, and understand what the limitations are. What we know that they don't know for sure, right? We don't know that they're not looking, you know, maybe they're not looking at the sky and there's like a huge rock about to fall down. So if I know that the car is only looking like in 2D and not in 3D, if I know that the car is doing that, I'll be the one that applies the brakes, because I know that the car will not be able to handle that. So that's what what I'm talking about, understanding the limitations of the model that you're using. So I think that's really interesting, and that's why, you know, that applies also for like any enterprise or any business in which you're making decisions based on the data.
The data.
You need a little bit of the context of the data and a little bit of that, so that you know the limitations. Hey, our markets are like super weird right now. Like this level of volatility, we've never seen it. We probably can't apply the model right now, because, you know, let's check if the model is actually saying something that makes sense or not. The markets just pointed to negative interest rates. Have we ever used this in our training data for a model? No, then probably we'll get something nonsensical, or maybe we could get something nonsensical. Let's test it out first. Things like that. And that's what I'm talking about, data and statistical literacy. It doesn't mean that you're able to build the model. It means that you understand some of the limitations that the methodology involves.
Yeah, we don't have to trust other than it now. We have a question by Pedro Toledo here about the insurance pool method that you said before, and basically
That's right.
the pool method that you said before for the insurance.
And the no fault.
Yeah, exactly, the no fault method. So basically, he's saying like if there is no fault, if there is no one fault, how is it going to be the incentive for a particular company to improve safety if the cost in case of an accident are taken from a common pool? And this saying correlating with the clearing houses in the bank system before the Fed worked similarly, but then there was a strict rules to belong those clearing houses. Otherwise, the incentive might to be the cheaper and safer option. So basically, I think, and Pedro here, correct me if I'm wrong, if you wanted to interact, but what you are saying is, if there's no one fault, it would be easy always, like if any given fine. Like basically, that's what you are saying. I think, and here, Guillermo, correct me if I'm wrong, but at the end, there hasn't been taken, the fault is from Uber, but it has been settled. So basically, the common pool here has been Uber's balance sheet. So at the end, there's no fault on anything. The fault is only in the press or who's pointing to Uber. But in terms of the where the money is coming from, it would be now from the common pool would be Uber. What do you have to say about if you think that constructing this kind of no fault model brings us to a unsafer situation, unsafer option of I will have my common pool and everyone will be paid from there. Do you agree with that or?
I mean, that's a great question. I think that also talks about how it's not just a lawyer's
The
thing.
moral hazard, yeah, that would be a moral hazard example.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, yeah, it's a great example using the clearinghouses from the financial system, right? So yeah, so maybe there needs to be regulation around it that it like incurs a penalty on some sort of penalty on the the car maker. But maybe not. I don't know. Maybe we don't give all the money back to the car maker, right? Maybe we, if it's a cost of 100, we just give them like 80%. We give them 80. So, that they'll have like a 20% kind of like.
And I think that this is the main nature of an insurance, to cover that what's not predictable. That's going to be like the main nature of an insurance. Why you are paying a company X amount of money per month. And if something goes wrong, and it actually goes wrong, he's not going to be the one that is going to pay. I'm not saying that then the internal responsibility of now I'm going to raise you the X amount of money they were paying me Uber because I have to pay all for you. But the good thing about having a pool of funds in order to pay is to cover the main and the most weak part on this side. That would be the family of the person that has just been died in this case. And the good thing is within like not even 2 months, this family, they do have the money and they do have the compensation, and they have agreed with this settlement. And now there would be like a huge fight between the insurance that was covering Uber, but I'm pretty sure they will have some kind of insurance, because if not, they don't go to the streets. And the kind of quote, and this is a more internal fight, but the good thing of having like a pool system, and the same with the clearinghouses actually, is to cover the weak part immediately, and then we will discuss about the others, like what went wrong, without even needing to be whose fault or who's not. But to say, okay, I paid this amount, now statistically you will be in another level, so we may have to raise it, or we have to adapt it for another kind of contract between you and me, because the situation has changed basically.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that's a great response. Yeah. But yeah, I think this highlights the need for, solutions that include everyone, and having teams that, that you have statisticians that know how the model is working, policy people that know, how to bring laws into being, and, people that understand the insurance incentives and things like that. And even, some philosophers. And I mean, I think all these problems, and more as we develop more technology, it's like a vicious cycle, right? Technology changes our society, and it's also based on our society, right? So I think it's important for technology to be more working in unison with society. And I personally believe that the government should regulate that, and should be a little bit more in the middle, and it's usually lagging a little bit. But I mean, it's a really hard thing to regulate around innovation, right? Because you don't want to coerce innovation and things like that. But I don't know, that's a whole other rant. So I mean, yeah.
Okay, here we have another question related more with the master studies. And they are saying how much a Spanish student should save to cover the master students' expenses in the US. And once accepted in the master, is there any fellowship? And do you have any? I mean, it's a broad question, but you can give from your personal.
It's a great question because it's a great question because I forgot to cover it. And so there's multiple options that you can do. First thing is financial help from the institution itself. right? So to whomever you're applying, to whomever university you're applying, they may have different levels of financial help. One could be, if some universities have sometimes like, you know, uh, I don't remember the term, the exact term right now, but it's something like financial. I don't know, whatever the term is, but basically, if you get in, they'll figure out how you can pay whatever you pay, or whatever you can pay, right? So they'll help you. So they will have some grants, and then if that doesn't cover all of, like, you still can't pay for the rest, they will kind of like give you like a TA or like a teacher assistant kind of like job or internship, or a research assistant job, an RA, or things that you can help out around the university and work there, so that you gain like a per diem or something like that. That is usually a little bit more with undergraduates, but for graduates, sometimes it happens, especially with the bigger, larger, more elite universities. They have these programs sometimes, again. Then you have outside institutions, and you have a specific institution that I want to highlight, in case you didn't know, that is called the Fulbright Association, or something like Fulbright.
Fulbright, yeah.
Fulbright Institute, I think. Fulbright Institute. The Fulbright Institute gives out a number of grants for international students to go to the U.S. So, but you have to apply like also way ahead, right? So there's when I was applying before, one of the times I was applying, I actually went to the Fulbright Institute, and they gave me the full perspectives of the different things I could apply to, and the terms and things like that. So I would encourage you to reach out to them, go to the webpage, and also go there and ask people, because they also have a lot of persons that are dedicated to helping you through the application process. So, that's a big help. And then you have a lot of Spanish institutions, usually like banks like the La Caixa Foundation and things like that, that also give out grants to Spanish students to go to, study abroad. So that's also another thing. And those need also some time in advance, but not as much as the Fulbright usually. So, yeah, that's basically it. So directly going to the college or university and talking to them, and they'll have a financial advisor and things like that. Sometimes they give you also like loans for a relatively low amount, or like low interest rate. But yeah, and then you have Fulbright and other similar institutions to that. And then you have, specific Spanish specific institutions for going abroad.
Okay. Yeah. And I recall when I was studying in university that there was this community banks in Spain. We call it Cajas de Ahorro, that they have like huge grants, and now they will start again because they want to support the local community. So that's another good reach to go through.
Yeah, that's a good way to go usually. Yeah.
Okay, so another question would be, how do you choose the university you want to apply for grad school? Can you apply to several ones at the same time?
Yes, you can definitely do that. Now you're going to have to go through the application process for each one of those, and it could be a little bit different. It's usually relatively consistent or standardized. And so, for example, when you're taking the GRE, when you're taking the TOEFL, when you're taking like any of these standardized tests, you'll have to get the code of the universities that you're applying for, and write that down and wherever you're taking the test, and they will automatically send your score there. However, if you find a university that you want to apply later, you can also request that after you've taken the test. But I think that they actually have like a small fee for that, maybe like a $10 or $20 fee for each university you add after you've taken the test, even if it's like a year or something like that. Most of these tests have a valid period, so they expire, like the score expires after. I think you should check that out because it depends. Each university has their own timeline, but it's usually around 3 years give or take. So that means you can take that exam really far out and actually see if you got a good score or not. If you want to do it again, you can take it as many times as you can, and only the highest score will be sent out. Actually, I don't know how that works. If you put but yeah, I mean, so if you're like super in advance, just take it a bunch of times. Don't write the universities you want them to notify, and then after you've done it, you just pick whichever universities you want to notify, and they'll automatically just send the highest score. Things like that. How do you pick? So for me, it's more about, especially for graduate school, I'd recommend going to the academics, to the professors, the lecturers, the professors, and looking at their interests, looking at, their research topics, especially the current research projects that they have, and actually reach out to them. That is something that I should have said. Try to reach out to professors in the universities. They are, they're busy people usually, but if you have, if you're not like, hi, I'm interested in your project. No, just, tell why you're interested in your project. Give maybe a little bit of background about yourself, about why you could be an asset, or, how you could help, or why you're interested in this. And, send them a quick email that has that stuff. And, ask them maybe specific questions, not ask them, how can I help?
Tell me about your life, yeah. Like
I'm interested in like the types of projects that you're doing right now, because I would love to apply to, your school and work, with your team or something like that.
And this is good because this is good because normally, from my experience, like we weren't encouraged to do so, and these professors are willing. It's like most of the time they are willing to talk about their topics because that's their research, so they are happy to discuss. And they don't mind. They are not going to disturb by reaching out to them because they are happy to talk, and maybe they gain something from this talk. So that's really good from them.
Yeah, absolutely. So feel free to reach out. Are you hearing? Sorry, somebody's calling me on the computer. I don't know.
Maybe.
Do you hear it?
Yeah, I hear a little bit.
Oh, okay. Yeah, there you go. I rejected it. Okay. Sorry about that.
Okay.
Yeah, so definitely reach out to the professors, and that's going to be a huge help in making your application stand out. Also, so yeah, include that in your description and why that grad school.
The passionate letter.
Yeah, and as well as you're talking about your story, when you're talking about why this graduate school in particular, if you're able to mention professors and that you've reached out to them and that you've talked to them, that goes like long ways, like really, really long ways. So
you have far more interest in that school and not like a standard application. Yeah, that gives more empathy on the other side.
Exactly, because if you put yourself in the shoes of like the person that's trying to decide who gets into the project, or the program, it's really hard. You're getting a lot of applications that I'm sure like everyone is like super smart and have like awesome background stories and everything. So the more what you're trying to do is you're trying to select people that will work well in your program, in your university. So make that as explicit as possible. Try to make that decision easy for them. Try to think, okay, how can I demonstrate that I'm not gonna have like any problems once I get into graduate school, because I already know the professors. I've already talked to them. I already know a lot of I am already interested in the same research that they're doing. So I'm a great fit for the program. So that will make their life a lot easier if you're being very explicit about that. Like, I think I'm a good fit because of all these things, and I'm just going to work right off the box with them. So, I mean, that's the people that they're looking for. So make their life easy, and then your application will stand out as well.
Go through. Okay. Here we have another question. We have two more questions right now. And this is from another thing completely. It's about consultancy. So from your past, Guille. So it's going to be easier. So what kind of professional profiles are consultancy companies looking for in the US? And what do they want to see in your CV, your resume, in order to hire you if you do not have previous experience? So basically, they're curious, like, what can I do to enter in a consultant in the US?
Great question. So I don't know that much about like what's the word, like strategic consultants and things like that, right? Like the the management consultants. You can probably ask that guy a little bit more about that. But from my background, like from a very STEMmy kind of like quanti engineering slash mathy background, sciencey. The best thing you can do, I think, the types of people that you're looking for, right? When you're applying for something that is more methodological, more kind of like data sciencey, machine learning, whatever you're applying to. If you're talking about that, then I can talk. And then I'd say they're looking for people that have done stuff, mainly, that have done stuff. So what's the best thing you can do if you don't have experience is to have actual projects and show them. Like it could be like a GitHub page, it could be like a web page. Having like an actual portfolio like designers have or like, artists have of the types of projects that you've done, even if it's just, like small web page that you built while you were in school, or a small model that you thought about, and they try to get it out there. Try to publish it. Like if you're using R, what's the thing? There's a website called RPubs, or you could use Shiny if you're doing like R applications. That's a great way. It's relatively easy, and they're really cool. If you're using Python, just get it on GitHub or post it somewhere. I mean, if you're using JavaScript as well, super easy. If you can build your own website using like GitHub pages if you want. You can do like a blog post, but I'd recommend more like of those kind of like GitHub projects or whatever similar things to that. And if you can't publish it because of whatever, you don't want to publish the code, at least get some sort of like blog of what you did and talk about the things that you used in terms of like the tech stack that you used. And then make sure that you list a little bit about the problems that you had and how you solved them. I always find those blog posts a lot more interesting than, the ones that are just kind of like, telling me how sparkly their app is. No, I'm because I'm not that interested in their app probably. I'm more interested in the problem and how they solve that problem. So that's what I want. I think that's what is cool. And that I think that's when I was hiring people in the consulting company, that's what I was looking for. Seeing how people dealt with problems, technological problems or mathematical problems, and seeing how they worked around them. So having that, yeah. Kaggle may be a good way around it. I don't like it that much nowadays, but because sometimes it could be like super kind of like just hack together, a bunch of like models without even knowing what's going underneath. But if you have a good Kaggle, definitely put it out for sure. I mean, good Kaggle not being, like a good score. I mean, that's cool too. But if you just have like a good literate program, that talks about like a little bit about the data and then a little bit about, the types of models and methodologies they're applying and then the results. Like I personally wouldn't care if you didn't get like, a top 100 or even a top 1,000 score, if you are listing your ideas and what's going on in the data, because that's the type of problems that's the type of work that I'm doing. So that's the type of people that I look for. Yeah. So Jupyter notebooks and things like that are awesome. And like our what's the name? Our Markdown, things like that are super awesome as well, because you can include descriptions of what you're doing and of the data and show small graphs and also show the code. So that's a good way to go, I think.
I agree. And also talking about the same thing, I work in a consulting company as well, and the same one that used to work with Will. And from more management, I'm in contact basically with this kind of, and at the end with this kind of model related themes, but I'm not on the side as Will was. And basically from my side and from my experience, what I recall it is people in consulting companies, they like to see new hires that they try to challenge themselves all the time. And basically when I do some interviews, I like the people that I saw that even if they have studied like law and economics, because that's my major also, I see people and felt interest on people that they were doing some Coursera's degrees or some other studies that didn't have to do anything with their degrees, and they were doing, for example, like I'm trying to study like a coding course on this side. I'm trying to do something not completely correlated, but they were completely continuously all the time challenging themselves into a broader expansion of them and to be ready to basically that's what in a broad sense of consultancy is to be prepared to challenge anything because somehow someday you will have to face something that you may not think that you're prepared to, but everybody's expecting you to face it and try to find a solution for that. So that's what they want to see. They want to see people like fearless. They want to see people like trying to engage anything and try to prepare in a broad sense and not being like I'm specialized on this small thing. And in the resumes, they also like they look also in the degrees in the marks that you may have. But an interesting thing, and this correlates a lot with the letter that Will has explained, they want to see something that remains on your site when you read it. Like a typical thing to do is write sports or interest in sports. But if you analyze as a resume, more than 50% of the focus attention is on the first three lines and the last two lines. So if you put something that will correlate to them or will focus their attention, oh, this guy has done like a entrepreneur tournament in their city. So it means that it's someone that is willing to go outside and to explain something and to participate. It's a thing that the companies they are really looking for, and here in the US more and more because they like people that they go outside, they do this kind of projects, and they go like, I have a small entrepreneur or trying to bring some networking correlated on this kind of IMFA association is bringing us this opportunity at the end. Is what is giving like well, I'm trying to learn from universities. I'm trying to collaborate with universities, not because it's my job. It's because I'm feeling and I want to expand this kind of interaction with professionals or with students all over the world. So this kind of interaction that you're doing, I would put it definitely, and I would put it on the bottom, on the top part of your resume. That's a good point to me.
Yeah, totally. And that like being proactive is it's one of the best things that you can do also for, applications for master or, graduate programs. They're looking like, yeah, in the US, it's super important being proactive and being, if you participate in like an activist kind of thing or absolutely whatever, whatever it is, even if it's just, I started a pottery class because I was interested in pottery and nobody was giving pottery classes. So I organized like a pottery study group or whatever. All of that goes really, really long ways. This is really well, considered in the US. Like that's really important. So yeah, definitely. Oh, and what Abel said, Coursera. So actually that helped me getting into the program here. So I did the data science specialization in Coursera, the one that John Hopkins offered. I think I was like one of the first or second cohorts to do that. But doing Coursera courses actually shows that you are proactive, that you still want to keep learning. So for me, it showed that while I was working, and I was already like working for 3 or 4 years, I was like during the entire time I was always active in my learning, right? And I showcased that even while I'm working, I always have like time and make time out of my spare time to keep learning. So those type of people you want, because you're like, okay, he's gonna still be working while he's gonna do a graduate degree. I don't want people that are gonna get here and be like, oh, it's too much. I'm working. I'm just gonna drop out. So that shows to them that I already know how to kind of like manage learning and working at the same time. And it also shows that I'm working and I'm super motivated to study because I'm doing that on my spare time. So a little bit is like a little kind of like piece of advice is that sometimes paying for the course in Coursera it shows a little bit more of having that incentive, or like it shows that you're a little bit more serious about your learning. I know it's a little bit of a pain, but sometimes for maybe a few courses you can do then have like that specific certificate. I don't know how much that actually highlights or not, but for me, I think it worked. I don't know.
It's a good incentive also there. A human motivation all over the world. Okay, we have another one question. And how did you master your English to pass the English tests? and some tips on this, like how, because this is a challenge that we have in Spain. Like, how do I master my English if I go to the cinema and everything's in Spanish? Like, it's an
Yeah.
important thing to do. It's, how did
Yeah,
you
I
do
mean,
it?
for me, it's a little bit different
Different?
because when I was a kid, I lived in the U.S. for a bit. So I lived in the U.S. I started like elementary school back here. So I've almost had it from then. So it's a little bit
Hmm.
unfair.
Hmm.
The way I kept it, because I moved back to Spain when I was 6 years old. I was only for 2 years in the U.S. Is actually like reading in English. And even when I was a kid, I was not. I mean, you don't know all the words. Even in Spanish, you don't know all the words when you're a kid, right? Or
Hmm.
not even now. So just, I mean, just keep on going with that. Watching TV or movies in like the undubbed
Original, yeah.
version, original version, right? That goes a long ways for improving your listening ability. And the stupid thing is actually like on Coursera or like online videos and even YouTube speeches or whatever. Um, you can like make the video go a little bit faster. Now I did it because of time, because I needed to get more done and I wanted to go to sleep. So I would watch it on like 2 times or 1.75 times. But
Yeah.
it actually helped me improve my listening skills quite a bit because if you're getting like really like fast speech, you're
Information, yeah.
actually
You have to get
yeah, you're
faster.
actually improving your listening ability. So I don't know. That's a weird thing, but maybe it works for some of you guys.
Hmm.
Uh, yeah, I don't know. And then definitely just trying to use it, trying to speak it, trying to write it anytime you can. Like really, that's super important.
Hmm.
Don't
And
be
right now,
afraid.
no, nowadays, there's like a lots of resources, and we've talked about YouTube, for example, but there's lots of movies or any interaction that you do with Netflix, for example, that everyone uses
Yeah,
nowadays. That you will have this kind of option that you can see in the not in the Spanish version, but in the original version, so you can watch it and basically try to do this media. I know that it's hard to be in touch, and then also another thing that helps, and but this depends more on the time and money, is traveling. Like when you don't have the option, but to to talk in English, that's the main focus. For me, it helped a lot, and it was a nice experience. Is when I was studying in university one summer, what I do is like a camp counselor thing experience, and what I did is you go to an agency, and basically it's really easy for the US to bring people to camp counseling, and they do that in Spain, but they did it in the US, and it's basically an agency that you have to pay in advance, and then they bring you in the US for one summer, and then you are like basically taking care of kids, and you are speaking in English all the time. So that's another way, like by traveling, or by here and IMFAHE, what is doing is we are giving grants and for students to bring here, and not to learn English, not for that, is to work. But basically once you are here, you will have to work and live in English 24 hours per day, especially if you are like in the New England area. Like that's basically 24 hours per day. Maybe in California, I don't know how it's gonna be there. Like there are more like Latino or experience, or but
I mean, yeah,
it's
I mean, but I think even in Boston when I lived there, actually, like if you're going to like the Starbucks, you can act like. I remember when I was going with a friend and he was like learning English. He was from Spain, and he took like a long time to like. He was like, "Oh yes, I want this, this coffee," and please, like he really, he was kind of like struggling, but he got through it. And then the cashier just turned around and said, "Maria, dos cafés con leche," and like,
yeah,
but
even there, but that's what I feel like in New England, maybe Boston because of being area, but yeah, when I went in New Hampshire and those kind of cities, no one at all
oh,
speaks
okay, yeah,
with that
that's
with
different.
that. Yeah, it's more in the mountains. So, but here, for example, if you wanna like when like couple weeks ago, we went to Miami as well, and it was impossible
Yeah.
to talk English
Yeah.
there. So it's that what I would do. I would traveling, but traveling to places where you can actually speak English. And nowadays, a lot of people go to London, and London is getting more difficult because of a lot of critical mass of Spanish over there because they are traveling. Uh, Another question they have: U.S. private companies are investing in research in interaction of technologies and on society. How about Spain? like private companies investing on research and interactions. Like the thing that you're focused on your research basically is interaction, technology, and society. What do you feel like that's in Spain is any kind of company or anything that?
So that's a good question. I wish I could answer a little bit more. I've been like out of Spain for like almost 5 years now, so I'm a little bit out of touch. So I don't know that much about Spain.
Mhm.
Um,
Or Europe, you can say
yeah,
in a broad sense.
I know that in Berlin, for example, and there's a bunch. There's a few for sure. I mean, you always have the Googles and the the Apples and the and the Facebooks that do sometimes that research. They sometimes do it as well on their like European locations. So
Hmm.
that's a good way to go about it as well. And then you maybe have sometimes an easier way to kind of like jump the bridge if you eventually want to go to the US or wherever you want to go, right? So joining those are a little bit better. I don't know. I really don't know that much. I wish I would, and I hope
Hmm.
I get in contact a little bit more. But
Yeah.
right now, I don't know of any. But again, it's probably more because I don't know that much.
Hmm. Because right now, when I've heard about, I have some friends that in Spain, like the same as you. We've been out from Spain 3 years now. Well, me 4 years. No, you 5 years now. You said. So basically, it's difficult to know. I know some tech companies, some startups that are starting over there with information management, but not this of
Yes.
the focus related with technology and society. I don't recall it right now, but maybe because of my memory, or maybe because we haven't been in touch that much with the society and with the technology in Spain. But it's a thing that basically, as anything, it will somehow, because it's a matter of not if it will happen, if it's when it will happen.
Yeah.
Maybe it's a thing that we go a little bit uh, under or slower in Spain, but here in California, for example, it's a thing that in the tech companies they have been working for that for a while, for some years. So it's a different, I would say, like a different stages on the tech companies on this side, and also helps that this kind of roles as Will is doing is researcher and a university collaboration. So it's basically a private researcher, which is a role that it could be exported somehow to Spain for that. So that will enhance it in Spain opportunities for these kind of companies. No. Okay, so I don't see any other question, guys. So if you don't have any other questions or anything, I think we've covered all the subjects that we wanted to cover. And we don't have anything else but to thank Will for your help and for waking up early, because in California it's like 3 hours less than in New York. So, and for the people in Spain that they are staying later, so for a Saturday afternoon. So it's a good thing to thank everyone, because we are doing this as a collaboration with universities, and we are trying to get in touch at the end with Spanish to try to share our experiences and this kind of subjects of that, this especially this last question that has asked, give us an opportunity to like, and now I wanna, when this call ends, I will go and look for these kind of companies that go related with technology and society. And I'm pretty sure that in Spain we don't know it by ignorance, so it's our fault. And get in touch and these kind of things that I want to know. So I think it's a good opportunity. So thank you, Will, for everything.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, no, my pleasure. Thank you for inviting me, Abel, and like if I one thing I forgot to put my contact information there. So if anyone wants to like reach out to me, I'm like glad to, talk anytime or anything. Abel, you have my email if you
Yeah, I
want to
have your
just like
email. What I will do, I will post it in the Infi Connects, and so that, I mean, I hope you don't get like a lot of spam or a lot of bad. If someone wants to reach, what we've said, like when someone wants to reach and ask like concrete question because it was too
yeah,
shy,
yeah,
so go through and we'll post the email so everyone can contact him or me. I mean, we all have my contact or his email.
exactly. Yeah,
Either way.
and I do the same, and like I'm a mentor for like people that are doing my master's program right now and things like that. And if you're actually interested in that program, I'm also happy to talk about that. I
Mhm.
do that almost like every other week. So
Yeah, we're
yeah,
not asking for a job. We are only like opening gates. Like, feel free to come. We are not shy.
yeah,
So.
yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Awesome. So thank you, everyone. Yeah, and thank you, Abel, for this opportunity. It's been a lot of fun.
No, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Bye. All right, take care.
Bye, everyone.